So I have had the Nokia 6 for about 1 week, and in this video I want to share with you my 1 week later experience with this device. That video is coming up right now. Let's go. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology, and welcome to my 1 week later experience with the Nokia 6. So first of all, let's just get the specs out of the way while we talk about this phone. You know, some people might be watching this, they're not really aware of the specifications. This is a 5.5 inch Full HD display that's 1920 by 1080p pixels here on this device, a 16 megapixel camera on the rear of the Nokia 6, and this has 1080p video recording, 3 gigabytes of RAM with Snapdragon 430 CPU. Now there is one with 4 gigs of RAM, but not for the US market. Now this does have a 3000 milliamp hour battery, and it does have Android 7.1.1 Nougat, so it's more of a stock feeling Android device. And here you go, you can see we are now in the software. Another key specifications is that this thing weighs about 169 grams, so it's not the heaviest device in the world, but it's not super light either. It's kind of weighty if you ask me. Adreno 505 on the CPU for the Nokia 6. So keeping all those specifications in mind, they sound pretty great on paper, especially considering that you can get the Nokia 6 for like $200 to $250 on Amazon. And to prove that, we can go ahead and show you that right now live on the video. But sharing my first experience, I do want to talk about the design experience here on the phone. So let me just show you this really quickly before we go any further. Nokia 6, getting all kinds of notifications. You can see $229 for this phone right here. You get $179 here. And I'm going to go ahead and pause the video because these notifications are driving me nuts. I'll be back. All right, guys, so we're back in. So yeah, like I said, $200 to $250. You would think like, man, this is an incredible deal. But do keep in mind that around this price point, there is plenty of options. You got options like the Moto G5 Plus, for example. You do have options like the Alcatel 5S, I believe it's called. You do have options, like the Samsung Galaxy J7 lineup, which are pretty nice phones in this price category as well. But in terms of the design, what I've liked about this design in the first week using it is that it feels extremely, squarish, which is a little bit different than a lot of the phones that you see on the market today. A lot of them are very curvy. They wrap around your hand pretty nicely, but they all kind of look the same. And I think Nokia is looking pretty unique here with the Nokia 6 with more of a square body on a large smartphone. You could even say these sides kind of look reminiscent of, an iPhone 5, an iPhone 5S. And I kind of like that design, going around the sides with the chamfered edges. One thing I don't like about this design is that camera still has a hump on the back. I mean, it's not too bad, but there's still a hump here on the camera, which I never really do appreciate when phone manufacturers put humps on their cameras. I do like when they're flush with the design, so when you lay it on a table, it could potentially get scratched over many times of just throwing it down on the table. Now, of course, if you get a case, this is rectified, but not everybody wants to use a case. So I do want to talk about the durability as well. And if you can see right here, I do have chips already on this phone, and I never even dropped this phone once. So I don't like the fact that that happened here on the Nokia 6, and I barely just got this phone. I mean, I didn't even drop it once. It's only been in a box with other phones, and other phones in my box they kind of sit like this, like on top of each other, but I'm not really reckless with them, and I see how this just chipped up just sitting in a box. So I'm not really digging that here for the Nokia 6. So in terms of durability, I don't think this is going to be extremely durable when it comes to around those chamfered edges over the long period of time. So you see how they're shiny right here? I do feel like these are going to chip really easy, and this paint will chip up just like any of those older iPhones, like iPhone 5, 5S, iPhone 6. The paint, if it's this dark color, it means it's painted on. It can chip pretty easily. So keep that in mind if you are picking up a Nokia 6. The durability is strong, but it's a really sturdy device. It's strong. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to break in half, nothing like that. It's not going to bend, but it does have the ability to chip pretty easy. So keep that in mind if you are picking up a Nokia 6 series of device. So let's talk a little bit more now about the display. So Nokia offers up a 1920 by 1080 Full HD panel here with the Nokia 6, and this is one area where I have really no complaints about this device. I mean, it performs very nicely. It looks very crisp. We're going to take a look at one of my posts on my Instagram pages, the iPhone 8 clone from yesterday, and you could easily read the text. You can see iPhone 8 clone. It looks very sharp, and I have had no issues with it. It does err a little bit on the cooler side out of the box, but overall this display, guys, it's pretty incredible for this price point, and I actually enjoyed it more than the display on the Moto G5 Plus. I just think it looked a little bit better, a little bit closer to a flagship caliber display. So Nokia has hit this one out of the park in terms of display, and you won't even care that this is not a quad HD or a 2K resolution panel. It looks great, and it gets plenty bright and dim, so you can see you're not even going to be able to see much here on screen with this whole super bright display. But if I dim it down, it also gets really dim, so you can see right there it does have adaptive brightness built into the Android software. So the display is pretty great. You can even see it pretty well on viewing angles, no issues there. So I did enjoy this display, and the fact that it's a flat display makes it really nice to consume content on this. So watching videos is going to be a joy here on the Nokia 6 for anyone who decides to pick this phone up. So 1 week on, we should really discuss performance. This is an area of this phone that, has actually pretty much very disappointed me. The performance on this phone, don't get me wrong, it's not horrible performance. It's got a Snapdragon 430, that's an octa-core chip. But the Moto G5 is kind of setting the standard as the budget king right now, 625 Snapdragon CPU, and you're getting this phone for around the same price as this phone. Don't get me wrong, the Nokia 6 feels a little bit more premium in terms of the build quality, but Moto G5 Plus almost has got the same quality on the rear back panel. This is aluminum here. It's a little plastic on the sides, but I mean, when you got phones in your competition, in your price range, giving you Snapdragon 625 and you're charging the same price for a Snapdragon 430, we got a problem here, Nokia. I mean, people are going to notice this, especially us Android people, because a lot of Android people, we know about our phones, a lot. I mean, that might be a little bit just of an opinion, but what I've noticed in my life, this is just my perspective, my journey. A lot of people that use Android phones, they pretty much know a little bit about tech. People that use iPhones, for example, I think they know somewhat about tech as well, but I find that a lot of people that use Android just definitely know what they're getting into when they go into an Android. Most people just buy an iPhone. They're like, I just want a simple phone. I get the iPhone, but people buy Android phones are like, they look into the specs, they care about those things. And I think this is really going to be a sore point, and it's going to, cost Nokia a lot of sales here on the Nokia 6 once people become aware of the fact that the performance here takes a hit. So, I mean, you're not going to see it too much in day-to-day apps, but where you will see it is when you're running things, multiple things at once, and you're just perusing this UI. It does have a little twitch to it. It just doesn't feel ultra smooth. I mean, on camera, it's going to be hard to pick this up, but it just has twitches from time to time, meaning that you could see the frame rate drop. You can actually see the wait time from going to a Wikipedia, for example, to the home screen. You could actually just see the little twitch in the animations. It's just not buttery smooth like a lot of the mid-range phones are. And I'm always gonna, for this video, I'm holding it up to the G5 Plus because the G5 Plus has pretty much set the bar for super smooth mid-range smartphones. I mean, this phone feels like flagship level when you're not doing anything intensive. Whereas I could tell I'm using a low-cost device in a Nokia 6 when it comes to performance. Gaming is okay on the Nokia 6. It loads pretty fast. But like I say, just apps in general just don't seem to work quite as fast as I would like on a Nokia 6. Now, Nokia did release an update to make the performance a little bit more stable, a little bit more smooth. But the Snapdragon 430 CPU that's in this device, it only supports up to 1080p resolution. And that's why with the Nokia 6 that, it's kind of a little bit twitchy, I think, because you're running its max resolution that this processor can handle on a 5.5-inch large display. And that's really pushing the processor here for this series of processors. So the performance, I'm not going to talk no more about it. I'm not going to say it's horrible. I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy this whole time right now. But I got to be real with you guys. If you guys are looking for a phone, I got to be honest with you. And the performance here, I think you're going to be, it's going to leave a little bit to be desired here on a Nokia 6. And you might be, if you're a performance freak and you care about a performance most in your phone, that's like one of your number one things, you might want to stay away from the Nokia 6. But there's a lot of other areas that are good about this phone. So let's talk about some of those. Performance aside, the Nokia 6 has been extremely enjoyable to use when it comes to the software. I mean, this thing feels like a Google Pixel in terms of its software. It's very light. Nokia's pretty much added nothing on top of it. I think they added an FM radio, something like that, maybe their own file manager. But other than that, this phone is super stock Android, and I like how Nokia didn't mess with the Android experience here. Everything you use just feels stock nougat, and it's very enjoyable to use. And because they did that, we can move into battery life a little bit here on the Nokia 6. The battery life has been stellar on this phone. So, like I said, if you want performance, you might want to think about something else. But if you want great battery life, Nokia 6 is going to give it to you because they optimized this phone pretty well for the Snapdragon 430 when it comes to battery life. And, a less powerful CPU usually gives you a better battery life on your smartphone. Now, some people would disagree with that, but I've noticed any phone that I have that has less of a, super powerful processor gets better battery life. This is just what I've noticed in my experience, and this one is no exception. I'm easily able to get 6 hours of on-screen time with the Nokia 6, and every time I'm looking at my battery and I'm outside, I'm like, wow, I still got 79%, I still got 78%, and it's been like 5 hours. So the Nokia 6 is a great battery life phone, and keep that in mind if you are picking this phone up. We don't got to talk too much about the storage. 1 week later, I've had no issues with storage. This does come with 32 gigabytes. I do have expandable memory on here, so no issues in terms of storage. In addition to that, you get Google Photos, which has a limited cloud storage. So, I mean, storage is no issue here for the Nokia 6. So we could just leave that aside. That was pretty easy to review right there. Now, getting into the camera experience a little bit more, I'm going to do a full camera review of the Nokia 6, so stay tuned to the channel for that if you'd like to see that. But the camera has been, I would say, acceptable for this phone. I mean, I was not disappointed with the camera. I don't think it's the best in the world, but I'm definitely not disappointed with the results I get for this price point. I think they're actually quite good at this price point. So you can see I just took that picture of the Moto G5 Plus. And you could see, I mean, look at the quality. It's very clear, very sharp, very crisp. I could see all the way up to the detail on that flash. That's pretty good quality, I think, for this price point. Now, where this camera suffers a little bit is not going to be in the fact that you have a crisp picture. It suffers in color balance, in color gamut. Stuff like that is where, you're going to see a difference in the higher end smartphones of the world is in those regards. Punchy, vibrant colors, you're not going to get it here, but you're going to get a nice, solid, clear picture from this camera. And I don't think anybody's going to have a huge issue with that. So you can see right here, let's go into something, let's find something super clear. So I took a picture of this flower. This is going to be featured in an upcoming camera review. You can see, look at the detail on those flowers. I mean, again, the color is a little bit off. It's not amazing color, but it's still nice to look at. I'm not going to be like, if you show me this picture, you're showing this to a family member or a friend, you're like, look at this picture I took. Nobody's going to say, oh, look at the color balance and stuff like that. It's pretty nice. You can see details good, and it especially does well in daylight. So if you're trying to take this out on the night, this is not going to be the phone to take out on the night. It's not great in low light. Video quality, only 1080p. So, again, like the pictures, it's pretty clear, but it's not incredibly amazing. Stay tuned to the camera review to see video samples. And that pretty much wraps it up here for my 1 week later experience. One more thing I want to touch on is this home button. It is pretty thin, and I had a little bit of trouble getting used to this because most, home buttons on smartphones these days are a little thicker than this. So I've had a little bit of trouble getting used to that, but overall, it's not a big deal. I should mention before I wrap this up, though, is call quality has been stellar. I've enjoyed the call quality here. The front-facing camera has been decent, not amazing, and the button tactile responsiveness has been very easy to locate, so I do enjoy that. Charge times, not the fastest, and the speaker here was acceptable. It's pretty loud, honestly. Pretty good speaker. You're not going to have no problems missing people's calls when they're calling you. But that wraps it up here for me 1 week later. To wrap up my final thoughts with this phone, it's kind of a mixed bag of potato chips, if you ask me. I mean, this thing, sometimes I love it and sometimes I don't love it, I kind of hate it sometimes. And what I mean by that is I pick it up, I feel like this is a super premium phone, then I start navigating the UI and I'm like, why is this so choppy and not smooth? I'm like, I just paid like $250 for this phone outright, and it's got some chop to it. And that's kind of not acceptable when you have a lot of phones that can easily outperform this phone. Like, I mean, the iPhone SE, for example, I got it for $170. This thing smoked this phone. The Moto G5 Plus, you know, again, I'm going to talk about the Moto G5 Plus, same price point, smoking this phone. And you just got to keep those things in mind. That's what I really have noticed the most about this phone. Now, putting that aside, you know, on a more of a positive note, it feels extremely premium. It's like you got a $500-600 phone in your hand with this aluminum body here. And the camera, I've been extremely impressed with, and battery life. So if I could put my, you know, performance issues aside, I would be able to recommend this phone hands down. But for me as a YouTuber, as somebody who creates videos and, you know, is constantly replying to comments, doing a lot of things at once, this phone doesn't work for me. But if you're not somebody doing a whole bunch on your phone, you don't need the most slickest, most powerful performance like A10X CPUs and, you know, i7 processors and Snapdragon 835 CPUs, and you could live with that. I think the Nokia 6 offers, you know, everything else that you would want in a phone. Battery life, decent camera, great build quality, and pretty good looks as well. So that's really how I'm breaking it down. That's pretty much it. If you want performance, you know, this is not the phone, I think, in this price point. If you want everything else, it offers that. So that's pretty much how I'm going to assess this. Anyway, any questions, comments, concerns, you know, leave those down below in the comment section of this video. Hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Be sure to be well. Nick here, and peace.